Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is with you. I am the Naked Duck, and these are my 5 things to consider before you start riding. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do. It's a lovely evening for it, actually. Suicidal pedestrians. You may notice I've changed the setup slightly since the last video. I was getting sick and tired of the camera dangling down here and getting caught on my shoulders and stuff when I'm trying to look. So, and I hope you're all doing well. It's been a while, I know, but I'm now off work as from today. So the plan is to get out there, smash out some content over the next couple of weeks. Definitely the bike trip next week, for instance. Can't wait, to be honest with you. So, getting down to the list. Top 5 considerations before you ride. First of all, I was going to say, you know, these lists are kind of for fun, but I do hope that I actually impart some wisdom as well to anyone, especially the younger generation. Without further ado, coming in at number 5 is money. Now, I've mentioned this in one of my other videos, I think in the top 5 reasons to ride or something like that. And I basically mentioned that it is cheaper to ride a motorcycle. Now, that is true. However, well, I think it can be true, but one of the big things that people don't seem to realise is that there is, just like anything else, there is a very expensive way and a very cheap way of doing it. And what I mean by that is basically it is not as cheap as you think, because people think, it's okay, a bike costs much less to buy in the first place, the maintenance is a bit cheaper, it does much better fuel, the tax is lower, so generally you're paying out much less than your basic level car. Now, I personally, yes, that is kind of true, but the truth of the matter is, I mean, if you're going to buy like a little cheap bike just to get back and forth to work, I'm with you, it is going to be cheaper. However, if you, like me, end up being completely obsessed with motorbikes, they just become a bit of a money pit. In a good way. I mean, you know, you're investing money into your hobby, into what you love, and you know, at the end of the day, I love spending money on a bike. Like, for instance, I've just bought a new windscreen for this. Should be arriving hopefully on Thursday. Okay, coming in number 4. This is a slightly odd one. This got mentioned to me today actually by a mate, and essentially number 4 is don't expect to pull loads of women on bikes. Now, I didn't really think that anyway, I'm totally honest, but you know, it's been brought to my attention recently that some guys get into this because they think they're gonna basically pull loads of chicks on their epic motorbikes. Now, do I think bikes are amazing? Yes. Do I think that women think that? There's probably a handful of them that do, but generally it's middle-aged men that you're going to attract with your motorcycle. You know, especially if you've got something that's fairly new and fairly expensive, you're gonna catch the attention of lots and lots of middle-aged men who want to talk to you about torque figures and horsepower and you know, yeah, all that, you know, torque curves and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, if you were trying to get into this, you think like that chick that you like is going to end up liking you even more because you've got a bike, I would probably think again. Unless she's like a biker chick and is into bikes, I would probably rethink your strategy, because honestly, like I said, you will just attract many middle-aged men who just want to talk to you about your bike and not much else. Number 3 is your license. Now, I don't know what it's like across the pond. I should imagine they have, you know, there's obviously a different system in place, but over here in the UK you have 3 types of licenses essentially. You have your CBT license, which is not really a license, it's basically CBT stands for compulsory basic training, and essentially that is a 1-day sort of crash course on this is how you ride a motorcycle. I'm talking like this is how you push a bike, this is how you put it in gear, this is how you use your brakes, this is how you stop, and all that sort of stuff. A little bit of roadcraft as well in the afternoon, but it's basically a full day's training with a qualified instructor that will take you around and teach you the absolute fundamentals and basics of riding a motorcycle. Probably rule number 1 would be don't ride over stupid speed bumps like this that you don't actually need to ride over. You have your A2 and your A1 license. Now, I've said it in that order because your A2 license is essentially a full motorbike license, but with some power restrictions. I can't remember the figures exactly, but essentially you're restricted as to how much power and the size, the size of the engine that you can have. I think it's all done in kilowatts these days. So basically your power output, so your engine size is actually kind of irrelevant. It's more to do with the actual power output of your bike. So a lot of people, for instance, will get an A2 license and then they will buy a bigger bike and then they'll knock the power down. They get it restricted through an approved manufacturer or whatever. And again, you have to do like a mod 1 and a mod 2 for that. So a module 1 and a module 2 that basically consists of module 1 is essentially like your low speed maneuvering and your ability to you do your emergency stops, etc. But you do it in a safe environment inside sort of like a locked paddock with an instructor, and he goes through a sequence with you. And then module 2 is your road ride. Now your A1 license is exactly the same as your A2. You get it in the same way as your A2. There's a few differences. First of all, that will basically unlock the key to any size motorcycle, no matter how powerful they are. But you essentially need to either have had your A2 license for 2 years or be over the age of 24. So if you're a youngster, if you're 18, 19, potentially get your A2 license, and then 2 years later you can get your A1 license, whereas the rest of us would have to wait until we're 24. Coming in at number 2, no, that's 0, number 2. So number 2 is your winter plan. What is your winter plan? If you live somewhere, say like California, where there's like year-round sunshine and stuff, or at least a lot more sunshine than you get over here in the UK, and less snow, less ice, and just generally better riding conditions, then you might want to consider what you're going to do with your bike during those off parts of the season where you might not be riding your bike so much. Now there's going to be a lot of controversy around this one, because some people are like, I'm a year-round rider, I don't lock my bike up for 2 months of the year. And I get it, I get what you're trying to say. I'm there, I'm with you. Ooh, train, give us a nice little break, carry on with the lift. I get it, I understand that not everyone actually winterizes their bike and stores it for say a month or 2 months. I think for me it depends what bike I've got. Like I've had BMW GS's, for instance, that are, well, they're just massively, I mean, you can ride them all year round. You can ride them up a mountain if you want to, snow, ice, whatever, it's all good. But make sure you've got a winter plan. If you don't have somewhere to store a bike over the winter and you're riding say a sports bike, but you don't necessarily want to ride in the ice and the snow and all that sort of stuff, then you need somewhere secure and dry and decent to keep that bike over the winter time. So again, there's a lot of people who just put a cover on it and leave it in the backyard, and I think it all just depends on what you think of your own stuff. You've spent a lot of money potentially on this, so I would find somewhere secure. And things like batteries will start to drain and stuff if you don't ride them often enough, because bike batteries are so much smaller. So for instance, get yourself an Optimate battery charger or some kind of battery optimizer. Find it somewhere nice and dry and secure. Find somewhere nice and dry and secure, and get your bike away and get it all plugged in and good to go and looked after. No, it really is the moment you've all been waiting for. First of all, the train is gone. And people must think I'm an absolute maniac sitting here talking to myself. So first of all, the train is gone. Second of all, it is time for number 1. So coming in at number 1 is gear. Now, I mentioned this a little bit when we talked about money at the beginning. But gear is 100% the most important investment when it comes to buying them, or when it comes to getting into motorcycles. My advice is this: max out the gear that you can afford. It's all well and good buying a £15,000 brand new Yamaha R1 or something with like tea making facilities and stuff on board, all right, and it's basically just a rocket ship. But then not being able to buy really decent gear for yourself. Like, I get it, you want to get that bike that everyone's like, ooh, ah, and again, it'll just be the middle-aged men doing that, not the chicks, so don't even worry about that. Make sure you leave plenty in your budget for a decent jacket, trousers, gloves, boots, and a helmet as an absolute minimum. People then obviously add things to that as well. So stuff like body armors. Sometimes people get those what do you call them, those airbag jackets and stuff. And again, anything like that, spend the money on the gear. I understand it's really, really tempting to buy the bike, then buy the exhaust, and then pay for it to be decatted, and then get yourself those absolutely sick carbon wheels and just all this ridiculous stuff that you're going to spend thousands of pounds on. Invest the money in the gear first and then build up the bike as you go along, because honestly I've had an off over last winter. Luckily I wasn't seriously hurt. I did hurt my shoulder a bit, and it was on a Fireblade actually, the bike that I had before this. And I'm telling you now, having decent gear, I will forever be an advocate of ATGA, all the gear all the time. I know it's a really like boring thing to say, but after that little off that I had, it made me realise how scary it is and how quickly things can go wrong and out of your control completely. You know, not necessarily because you're doing anything mental, but just because, you know, conditions change, rain, you know, bad drivers, whatever it might be. 100% invest in gear and make sure that you keep, you know, as much gear money as, you know, split that budget down. Say this much is for my bike and this much is for my gear, and really try and stick to your budgets as much as possible. And if you know, if you're not sure, spend the money on the gear rather than the bike. Anyway guys, thank you very much for tuning in. That has been my top 5 considerations before you start to ride, and there are many more of course, and maybe I'll do a part 2 to that, because there are many other things to consider as well. Ride safe if you are going to get into this incredible hobby slash very efficient way of getting around. Then do so safely, get the proper instruction, get the proper gear, get a decent bike, and stay safe, keep it shiny side up. I'll see you in the next one.